Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Paris and today I'm doing my May reading wrap up. I was gonna say May TBR, but we're already into June now. So today's May 31st. I feel like this month has flown by, but also I feel like I barely read anything. For some people, this is a lot. For some people, this is very little. This month, I read 6 books, and that, for me, feels like very little. I just feel like I've been a little bit more busy this month more than the last few months. I'm happy either way that I've been getting through books that I really want to read. So let's get into the books. I feel like I read this so long ago. The first book that I read this month was Daisy Hates 2, which is Daisy Hates The Great Undoing by Jessa Hastings. If you've been watching my videos, you already know I love this Magnolia Parks universe. I honestly think Magnolia Parks is my favorite series or universe that I've read this year. I am patiently, or I should say impatiently, waiting for Magnolia Parks 3 to come out. I gave this book a 5 stars. I can't really say too much about this book because it is the 4th book in the whole universe, so I can't really say too much without spoiling the book. But basically this book is the same as the first Daisy Hates book. It's about Daisy, Christian, and Julian. And Daisy and Christian, they have their little drama within their relationship, and Julian, in this book, we get to see Julian in a different light. The quotes in this book are amazing. I 100% am willing to read every single book in the Magnolia Park series all over again because I loved it that much. I will say, if you're someone who's getting into this series, this book takes place at the exact same time as Magnolia Parks 2, so there is a lot of overlap with this book and that one, just with a different point of view, and it's just, I love this book so much. This book ended on such a crazy cliffhanger. So I did get into a bit of a slump after reading this, but I feel like most people get into slumps when they're reading a book that they don't like, but I find personally I get into reading slumps after reading a 5-star read because it's like I need time to process what I just read, and then to get into another book sometimes is a bit hard for me. I also am thinking, okay, if I get into another book, it might not even compare to this one, it might not be as good, and that's not really a good way to think because every book is different. But I got into a bit of a slump after reading this. So after I read Daisy Hates, I went into The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. If you watch my video of my friends picking my reads, this was the first book I read in that video. I couldn't really decide if it was a 2.5 or a 3. I felt like 2 might be a little low. I felt bad giving it a 2, but at the same time, I have books that I've read that are 3s that I've enjoyed a lot more. So I was like, I don't know, I feel like under a 3 is just, it's mean. I just felt really bad because I know that the author was trying to go somewhere with this book and really wanted to shed light on racism and colorism. I did really like some aspects of the book, but I just feel like it fell flat for me. The reason that I was reading the book, it was almost like those reasons didn't really exist anymore. It did feel a little bit dragged out, and I felt like a lot of the topics that I did enjoy were very short-lived. So if you don't know, The Vanishing Half is about 2 twin sisters who grow up in this small town and they run away at the age of 16. And a few years later, they end up going 2 different ways. They end up splitting up, and one, she marries a black man and they have a black daughter, and the other one, she ends up living as a white woman, and she married a white man, she had a daughter with him, and he didn't even know about her past. The 2 of them, their daughters end up connecting in some sort of way. Certain things start to unravel. We start to see a little bit of how the 2 moms' decisions in life have affected their daughters. I really liked the twins' lives. When we started getting into the daughters, it wasn't as interesting for me. Around the end, or the 70% mark of the book, I just started to skim it because I wanted to know where this book was going, and I feel like it didn't really go anywhere. After I read The Vanishing Half, I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and this one is a thriller. This was another library book of mine, and I rated this a 4-star. Her writing's very quick and easy. So The Guest List is about a wedding that is happening on an island just off of Ireland. This island is just very creepy. It's pretty much like a deserted island. There's no one really living on this island. Someone ends up dying during this wedding. You get 5 point of views throughout the book. You're reading the night before the wedding and the day of the wedding, and then you're reading the wedding night. Everyone seems very suspicious. Everyone has a motive, and we just need to figure out who it is. I kind of figured out who was killed, not really early on, but maybe halfway through the book. There was a point where I did guess who did it, and I didn't get it right, but I got something to do with the story right. Me personally, I don't get too upset when I guess things while reading thrillers, because that's the fun in reading a thriller, is the guessing part. And yes, the plot twists are very fun as well, but sometimes I'm okay with having guessed certain things. I really enjoyed that book, and it makes me want to read another one of Lucy Foley's books because they're just so quick and easy to finish. After reading the guest list, I went into Before We Were Strangers by Renée Carlino. This is a book that I feel like everyone that I watch on BookTube and on Bookstagram, I swear everyone likes this book, and I haven't heard anything bad about it. I wanted to read it so badly, and I gave this book a 4.5. And I feel like if it wasn't for the end of the book, I may have just given it a 4. I feel like around the ending, things wrapped up really well for me, so it made me want to give it a bit of a higher rating. It wasn't a 5-star for me. It's basically about Matt and Grace, and they go to university together, and they just have a really good connection. They have a great friendship. You can tell that they kind of have a bit of this attraction to each other, but they don't really do anything about it. Eventually, as time goes, they start to explore their feelings with each other, and after time, things happen and they don't talk to each other for 15 years. Most second chance romances, it seems like there's that typical dual timeline, and this has that, but usually it's like alternating chapters between past and present, whereas this one was broken up into parts. This one was broken up into 3 parts, so it's a bit different. Well, there's technically 4 parts. The 4th part is just like an epilogue. I have to say as well that the miscommunication trope is usually in second chance romance, and a lot of people hate that. However, I feel like this miscommunication wasn't as bad. This wasn't something that I feel like, oh, this could have been solved with a simple conversation. The reason I say that is because of the time of when they were younger. To communicate with people when you're not with them was a little bit different during the time period that this book was set in. It was a bit more difficult for them to just have a simple conversation. So I read Happy Place. You guys already know, if you saw my last video, I gave this a 5-star. I absolutely loved this book. This book is about Harriet and Wynne, and basically they used to be engaged, and their friends don't know that they broke up, and they're about to go on this little like friend vacation that they do a lot. They never really told their friends. They kind of wanted time to process. They knew that it was going to cause like a bit of a strain in their whole like friend dynamic if the two of them said that they broke up. They pretend that they're still together. This book has both of my favorite romance tropes, fake dating and second chance. It was just interesting to put the two together. Like, I would have never thought to do something like that, and I loved how it was done. It was definitely more than a romance. It went a lot deeper than that. I feel like this book has a lot of depth. It talks about some topics that are a little bit heavy. It goes into depth a lot about like things that we deal with in adulthood and the way that people around us affect our adult lives even, and it just shapes who we are a lot of the time, which can sometimes be a good thing and can sometimes be a bad thing. This is another one of those dual timelines, so we go back and forth between the past and the present, and I really liked how it was done because every time we were in the present it would say real life. Anytime we went to the past it would say Happy Place. There was like a point where it was like a harder time in life in the past and it would say Unhappy Place. I think it even said like Dark Place at one point too. The reason that they broke up to me wasn't really annoying. I felt like it made sense. Like, it was something that was disappointing, but it made sense based off what they individually what they were going through. Yes, more communication could have happened as per usual, but when you think about who we are as human beings, this was very realistic. One thing that a lot of us struggle with is communication. Some people are really great at it and some people really aren't, especially when you are dealing with something as an individual and you're in a relationship. Like, it can be really hard when you're going through very like major things in life. At the end of this book, I don't know if this is in all of them, but I got it from Indigo and it says it was an Indigo exclusive like interview or something. One of the questions that they asked Emily Henry was what she wanted readers to take from this book, and I thought her answer was just amazing. There is no one right path, and we always feel like if we don't want to do something anymore that it's a bad thing, and then sometimes we stick to that thing just because it's something that we had committed to in the past, but it might not even be for us anymore. And sometimes God is going to change your path, you know. Sometimes you're going to end up doing a job that you may have never expected, or you're going to switch your career path midway, or maybe you go to university and you change your major midway. Like, things like that are going to happen because we are learning and growing and learning ourselves every single day. I forgot to also mention, so Happy Place wasn't on like my TBR really. Like, I had it on my notes app where I was like, okay, if I can get to it, I want to get to it in May. So all the other books were part of my like TBR where I was like, I have to read this month, but Happy Place wasn't. But I'm glad that I read it anyway. The final book that I read this month was Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I went into this pretty much like a day after finishing Happy Place. Everyone was saying that this was their favorite book before Happy Place came out. What do the girlies know that I don't know? This wasn't on my TBR at all. Like, I was actually planning on reading this for June. I had to do 4.5 because I was really in between the 4 and the 5. January is the female main character, and then the male main character is Augustus, but we're just gonna call him Gus because that's what he is mainly called in the book. Both of them are authors, and January, she writes romance, primarily like women's fiction, and then Gus, he mainly writes like literary fiction, and the both of them have like writer's block. They wanted to do this little challenge where they both attempt to write each other's genre. January goes to her dad's like lake house, and they are next door neighbors, and they already knew each other from the past. We learned so much about authors and the process that they go through. I think every author probably goes through some type of writer's block, but also the processes they may take might be different. Also, just learning how an author comes up with a story, how they expand on their story, how they make everything come together. It was just so cool to read about two authors. When I went into this, I thought it was going to be an enemies to lovers, but I would absolutely not class this as an enemies to lovers trope. I am not gonna lie, I'm really tired of reading enemies to lovers. Thankfully, it was not enemies to lovers at all. One thing that Emily Henry never fails with is banter. I've laughed out loud for every single one of her books. The banter is just A+. I literally want to go through it again. Those are all the books that I read for May, and I was gonna say April once again. Like, I don't know why I feel like it's April, but those were all the books that I read this month. I will say it was a very good month. I had 2 5-star reads, but I had 2 4.5s, I had 1 4, and then I just had 1 book that I didn't like. The books that I didn't read this month that were on my TBR were Caraval. I didn't read. I was just never really in the mood to get into a fantasy, but now I've read way too much romance that I'm like ready to get into more of a fantasy. I do believe there's subplot of romance. I'm gonna read that this month. Another book that was on my TBR was Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I don't want to read that until I finish the Caraval trilogy, which I know I don't have to, but I just want to. I will post a little bit of a June TBR for you guys as well. I have a lot of books I want to read next month. It's not gonna work out to read all of them, but I do want to put together like books that I'm most interested in reading next month. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. I post videos every Thursday. Sometimes I add a little bonus video as well. I will see you in the next video.